It is 6:30 and we have a quorum, so the meeting is called to order. First item on the agenda is the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
And are there any revisions to the agenda?
The only thing under minutes, you have an updated copy of the minutes in the consent agendas. And you'll notice that it says what the purpose is for the executive session, and that was to review board candidate qualifications. So it would just say purpose, board candidate.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is citizen comments. And we'll start off allowing 15 minutes for citizen comments, and each comment will be limited to 3 minutes each. You'll be notified when 2 minutes has expired. Please, and just understand that the board may ask clarifying questions, but we will not get into a back and forth discussion. And who would like to make a comment? Okay, Beth.
So everybody should know me. I resigned, but sadly, due to my health, but I still care for these students here. My concern is with the state scorecard or whatever you want to call it from OSPI that they put out a report card on our schools. Our numbers are severely low, and I can address this in my resignation letter. Please get back to having the kids master the basics. CRTs and all this political stuff in society right now needs to be left out of the classroom. We need to get back to mastering the basics, and it's not okay that our scores are so low. I've even asked OSPI 3 times for the last 10 years worth of our scorecards with no response. So I would like to make an official public records request. If you guys, Ralph, if you have them, I would like our scorecards for the last 10 years. That is what I've asked for from OSPI and not gotten a response. So I will email that if you want it documented, but that is where I'm at.
Okay. Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Okay.
I'd like to speak.
Sure.
My name is Maria Woodall, and I have attended and spoken at several Skamania School Board meetings. I have personally reached out to the school board and the administration numerous times, raising concerns with the operations of Skamania School. The concerns of parents, citizens, and staff have largely been ignored or glossed over by the administration. And tonight, I would like to bring to your attention facts in the same vein that Beth is speaking in that I believe you cannot ignore in good conscience. The current state testing results for Skamania School District show that only 18.5% of your students met the math standards at a grade level below their 2021-2022 school year, and 44.4% met ELA standards. Your school district math scores are among the worst test scores in the entire state of Washington. So you are failing your students, and I'm here to ask what you intend to do with this problem and how you intend to remedy it. It's unacceptable. I'm not here to blame the teachers or the staff. There have been numerous staff who left the school citing a lack of support. There's clearly an issue with leadership at the school, and the students are the ones suffering. So while it was a really difficult decision to remove my child from a school that I have spent countless hours supporting, I do not feel 1 ounce of regret. after seeing a school district administration and board cavalierly ignore the community, students, and staff. And my hope is that moving forward, you take a hard look at what matters and put student education first and foremost. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Then we'll move to the consent agenda, and remember that any board member can ask for an item to be removed from the consent agenda. And as we go through it, I will be giving further clarification for some of the items. But is there any board member that would like an item removed for individual discussion? Okay, we've got the minutes from February 28th board meeting, minutes from March 7th workshop or special board meeting, and accounts payable. And our accounts payable, we have one warrant from the Capital Projects Fund in the total of $1,377.50 payable to PBS Engineering and Environmental Inc. The regular accounts payable total $17,222.91, and the biggest items normally are the ESD and Skamania County Public Utility District. We also have some, let's see, where did I see that? Oh, Micro K, we bought one teacher laptop for $1,289, and the Skamania Pud was $4,247. And Walter E. Nelson micro floor scrubber for the kitchen, and it's out of the kitchen grant, $2,584. And payroll, gross payroll, $55,917.22. Employer paid benefits, $27,821.77. Total March 22 payroll, $83,738.99. We also have a recommendation to hire Jamie Taylor. We have a resignation of Susan Kosman, and contracts with McGee Plumbing Company to install a filter for the well pump to catch sediment and sand. And that company has been on our Small Works district, or our Small Works roster, and has done a lot of work for us. And then we had issued a request for qualifications to look at the septic system, and we received two statements of qualifications from firms soliciting for the evaluation and design work. Not to do it, but the evaluation and design work. And Bell Design was chosen based on the experience and skill. We also have social media guidelines, final reading, and a resolution, which is a pretty standard resolution authorizing execution for petty cash funds. And would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. And now we're on old business, school property project update.
Okay, so I'm gonna read the statement and then we'll have Keith Bloom zoom in. The planners were able to visit the site and on Friday while they were in the area, and the property is currently now planted with 300 Douglas fir seedlings per acre. The piles will be covered during the summer once they've dried out a bit. This process allows for a more efficient burn once the rains return in the fall, winter. As we get into the summer, we'll place an order for some ponderosa pine, western red cedar, and oak to interplant next year. And then Keith will talk about the modernization grant and the septic. I can get him on here.
And I'll just add that the board is sending, thanks to Lisa, a note to all the students that made the presentation on the forest property up there, to thank them for their hard work and their excellent presentation.
looks like we've got Chuck in. But I
You
don't
see the top of your head.
Yeah. There,
Okay.
but I don't see,
Keith. You muted the mic.
Okay. So we might want to go ahead with,
I was gonna say that, let's just go ahead.
you want to go with him. Now, he's actually, hold on a second.
Modernization grant and septic project, both.
Right. Okay, well, then we could go on with Vicky.
Yep.
Next.
Yep.
You're on.
You mind if I swap out your
No,
laptop
go
real
ahead.
quick? Okay.
Oh, there's Keith right there. You want this?
That's not either.
He won't be
That's
surprised
Vicky.
to see me.
It
No,
says
at
right
the
there,
top.
Keith is
Oh.
under the.
He knows me.
Keith, we see your name, but not you. Now we see you.
I need to click on
There
his screen.
My apologies, being late.
No problem.
That's okay. So you're on to talk about anything about modernization grant and then the septic.
Okay, modernization grant, pretty much closed that out last month, sent all the final reports in, seeing the final documentation come back from the 3 state agencies. There is, HVAC, tweaking on the controls, programming, been improving it, we've got a couple meetings on it, not letting it go, it's a warranty issue, it's a operations thing, so before everybody leaves the project, we'll make sure that's working all properly. And got to get somebody at the district trained up on the system itself, but that's where we hope Dan will come in for the time being. The next one is, best I can tell, the RFQ was responded to for septic upgrades and drain field repair. We had a response to that, 2 firms. We met last week to select by qualifications. Both firms were qualified. One had more experience in Skamania County with county jurisdictional authorities, health departments, and building authorities. So that was well designed. And then I asked Bell, we asked Bell to submit a proposal to do the work before they can really do the design work. They have to do an evaluation and see how big the system is to fix. What's this going to entail? So this first phase of their proposal is simply an evaluation and a planning phase with the idea that documents to come quickly thereafter. There was some good as-built provided by the school of the existing system. That old system was shown on drawings that really helped a bunch. And beyond that, the idea is at this point, if the district would like to move forward, designing the system, Bell Design's proposal, I believe, has been presented or will be for approval. And then, depending on what we find out, what they find out, they'll put together a proposal, to complete the design. As large as the initial, because the initial has heavy equipment involved, excavating, try to find out what the percolation is, how the soils are working into the existing system itself. There's a few things of discovery we'd like to attempt to do over spring break, and that's why there's a little bit of urgency, but nobody's pressed to do anything. There can be time to consider. We're not going to get on the ground out there with heavy equipment until it tightens up, so spring break may not happen. It may have to be a Wednesday afternoon or Friday type thing, as the ground dries out. It's too wet right now to get out there.
Right, so folks,
Anyway, sorry I can ramble and I
no,
apologize.
so the board, you have their proposal. And so this would be a good time to ask Keith any questions about that.
Any ballpark idea on cost?
Yeah, wasn't it 12,000 something?
Yeah,
For the initial phase.
that was just for
Phase
the,
one.
Yeah.
For the,
were you asking about a ballpark for the whole project?
Yeah.
Oh,
Total project? Is that what I'm
Yeah.
hearing? Sorry.
yeah, the whole project.
Yeah, you know, any number that gets thrown out there is going to be proven wrong, folks. But I would say ballpark, and this is an educated guess, but the world is nuts right now. So, I think the grant proposal we made had it at, and I'm trying to recall, and I'm going from memory, but about $140,000 for the physical construction. We went after a couple $100,000 grant, urgent repair grant in December, and we were seeking almost all that $200,000. And I believe at that time we predicted, and that was just a dart throw to get something going. Feels about right, but and there's another opportunity. One of the exploration that's going to occur is if the existing tank can be reused. And that's going to be a critical component of determining how much bigger it is. The tank itself is, a big commercial, I'm guessing 5,000-gallon septic tank that may or may not be able to be reused as part of all of this. So that's what Bell is initially looking at, and have all those answers at the end of the exploration and evaluation. And the actual cost, I'll reach out to Bell and see what they've done recently in a similar fashion, see if we can get some real costs yet this year. But things are different than they've been. So I would have felt comfortable in 2 years ago, I would have said it's $90,000 to $100,000, what I said 2 years ago. So I'm looking at something. So when I say 140, 150 now, it's only a reflection of supply chain and all the other stuff that you guys have heard us almost seems overplayed anymore, but it is what it is. So,
But what we need tonight is an approval around the,
proceeding with Bell.
exactly.
But that was on the consent agenda.
Oh, yeah, okay. Anything else?
Not for me.
Now, did the consent agenda include?
I don't think it
I
included
don't
the
think it
12,000. I think we
included
should be prudent and just go ahead and have a
Okay.
motion on it.
All right, then we would entertain a motion to approve the contract with Bell Designs for 12,000. What was the exact number, Lisa?
12,237.50
$12,237.50.
for phase one investigation
Right.
recommendation. And I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the contract with Bell Design for $12,257.
237.50.
Yes, for the initial design work for the septic repair.
And do I understand that the intent is this will be covered by grant funds?
We are
Or a
hoping.
large portion of it?
We are
Okay.
hoping.
We've
Okay.
not been approved for that.
Not
We
yet.
tried,
Okay,
I thought it was denied, but we're gonna try for the grant.
exactly. It
Okay.
was.
but we
Yeah, we
continue in
applied
that
for a
vein.
grant and it was denied here in January. We were hoping to. I think it was denied, about 2 weeks ago?
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's because we got the 4 million for the other and they figured
Mhm.
we need to spread it out.
But we have others that we're going to look towards?
Just if the
Potentially?
state has another one,
Okay,
if they have another one.
okay.
And if I may, I'm sorry, and maybe this isn't my place to speak, but this is one of those kind of things that it's a pay me now or pay me later kind of deal when we're dealing with septic and drain fields. And there was an initial report that the drain fields from the septic system are about 70% failure right now. I believe those were the numbers. And there is a report on what was found. That's what That's the only reason I even stepped in, raised my hand and said, hey, there's a long-term problem cooking over here.
I remember that.
And it's just, you know, the function of maintenance and repair at this point. It's an old system. So,
Many hoops.
I think it's prudent to get it designed, and how it gets built beyond that, at least you've got a design.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you,
Thank
Keith.
you.
Okay, now Vicky.
No. Does that mean I get to unplug?
Yeah, let me say goodbye to Keith.
Bye, Keith. See you later. I'm unplugging you. Okay.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay. I think I might-
I've got
Wrong
one.
one.
Oh, you got it?
I didn't bring my clicker, so I'll just hang out right here if that's okay with everyone. Here we go. Hey everybody, my name is Vicki Herdina, and see, I've been here at Skamania since September of this year. I'm doing my administrative internship with Ralph as my mentor. I'm also the director of STEM initiatives at ESD 112. And tonight I want to share with you the work that I've been doing with the Skamania staff on math materials and our math professional learning community. So this really got started by taking a look at the board resolution, which I believe was included in your agenda packet for tonight, that looked at learning and adopting and implementing personalized learning, including some 4 key indicators. Learner profiles and what that means in terms of identifying specific student needs for growth and achievement. Identifying personal learning paths for students once we have that information to help them grow at along their grade level expectations and accelerate them where possible. Looking at competency-based grading and competency-based progression so that not all students have to be locked into the same steps as everyone else, and then creating flexible learning environments that really meet each kid where they are. And then as a result of the curriculum audit, which I undertook at the beginning of this fall, we're proposing kind of a longer term study of both teacher practice and math instructional materials. So I'm going to go through each one of those steps with you and where we are today. But this board resolution kind of provides the rationale for why we decided to dive into this study of math specifically. So curriculum audit was the very first thing that I undertook, which was basically meeting with each grade level teacher to examine what materials they currently have and what they're using for supplemental materials. So the current description of materials shows like kind of what they're using for that core instruction for all students, and then supplemental materials is where they need to go out and find things to fill the holes and things to bring things up to standards, but also keep things engaging for kids. So one of the things that you'll notice is the publication date of the current materials. Everyday Math in 3rd and 5th grade had like a blended publication date, so it was basically anywhere between 2010 and 2012. And then here on the right side, these are all the different ways that and resources that teachers are going outside of the sort of standard core curriculum to fill in all those gaps. So that's just sort of the titles and publication dates. This is the actual condensed version of the audit they undertook. So across the top, you see the key indicators for what we would consider to be really high quality instructional materials. And then X is when those things weren't present. The way I conducted the audit was to sit with each teacher and go through the current instructional materials and basically look for each one of these indicators. So the things that I highlighted in yellow were the things that were least seen in the current instructional materials. And these really are the big 4 when you're talking about making sure that teachers have access to high quality instructional materials. So the first one is it allows for conceptual understanding. That is, concepts progress over the course of the instruction. Uses manipulatives in math, which over the last 15 years of research has shown that is absolutely critical for kids of all grade levels. It's skills-based, meaning it aligns to that mastery-based learning, which wasn't present in any of the instructional materials that teachers currently have access to. And then the fourth one is it allows for student discourse, real-world problem solving, talking to one another, thinking through multiple solutions, and getting kids really more comfortable in their fluency with discussing mathematics. The other components were, does it have a comprehensive teacher guide? Well, any adopted curriculum in the United States typically has a comprehensive teacher guide. Provides support materials for intervention and differentiation, not at TK and definitely not at middle school. We had trouble locating a lot of middle school materials, including formative assessments so that we can progress monitor students, not in kindergarten. Summative assessments, if summative assessments are like those sort of final skills-based tests and end of chapter tests, things like that. Sometimes they weren't present, and that means a teacher has to then go out and create those materials on their own. And then the materials are free of, bias, not BOAS, bias, and reflect culturally relevant images and information. So as you can see with the existing materials, there's a lot of need for improvement in terms of what teachers have access to. So once we had a look at where the curriculum materials are, I started working with the teachers and surveying their current understanding of the standards, their beliefs about mathematics, as well as some of the other things that they have to do to round out math instruction. So one of the things that I asked was about the condition, and they definitely said they don't feel like they have enough materials for all students, not student workbooks, that there's not a workbook for every student, having to make excessive copies, not having access to manipulatives. They're spending an average of 45 minutes a day looking for additional materials to make sure that kids have the resources they need to learn math. Assessment sources, meaning do they have access to formative and summative tests? Not always, so they're writing their own. They felt out of a range of 1 to 10, 10 being the closest aligned to the Washington State standards that students are assessed on, that their current materials will rank about a 2 or a 3 to alignment to standards, which makes sense if you look at the publication date being in 2010 and 2012. And the Common Core really being implemented in Washington State around 2015. And the ability to use materials to make sure that kids are all working at grade level. They didn't feel like there was enough opportunity in the existing materials to really individualize instruction and get closer to that personalized learning path. So now this survey was undertaken right at the beginning of the school year, like September, late September. By the time I got all the materials pulled together, it was October. So at that point, we launched a math instructional PLC. So I'm here on Wednesdays all day. And so on Wednesdays during the instruction time, I typically kind of do the rounds and I go in and watch math teaching and sometimes jump in and support and coach. And then in the afternoons, we've been meeting every other Wednesday as a focus group around math instruction. It's included all of the staff, even the staff that don't teach math because they're really very interested and engaged in this, and the para-educators, and then obviously principal superintendent. We talk about shared values around mathematics. What are our beliefs around this mathematics? I really believe in beginning with the adults and making sure that adults are very clear on the instructional outcomes so that we can support students with that. And then getting them some practice and some professional development on what we call high yield instructional practices. And all that really means is that taking practices, classroom instructional practices from the research that says this works for all kids, kindergarten, 12th grade. These are just some kind of common routines that are really, really helpful for students to get more fluent with mathematics. So that was kind of the list of things we've been working on. And I got a couple of graphs here to show you some survey data that I collected from teachers because I really wanted to know where their strengths were and where they felt they needed to invest some time. So these 5 indicators here are beliefs about math. The first one, that math should focus on developing understanding of concepts through problem solving, very highly believe this concept. And this is great. This is what we want to see. We want to see teachers that really believe that math is about problem solving, right? Students need a range of strategies and approaches to choose from. In other words, there's not one right way to do math. Also, very high correlation to agreement there. So this is feeling really good. Students must master basic math skills before they can apply them to a problem. It's a little bit lower, and actually we had a higher number of folks here that felt that they disagreed with that. So actually what we would want to see is more disagreement with this statement. Because one of the things that we've learned through research in the past decade is that kids do not have to master basic math skills to be able to be good problem solvers. Because actually working through a problem can actually help them find the incentive to learn those math skills. The teacher's role is to tell, this is very carefully worded by the way, these come from OSPI. The teacher's role is to tell students definitions, problems, rules, and demonstrate how to use these. We're right in the middle there, and what we would probably want to see is more disagreement with this statement. So less telling, more showing, and more supporting their cooperative learning. And then here at the bottom, effective teachers make math easy for students by guiding them step by step through problem solving to ensure they do not feel frustrated. There's a high level of agreement here, and actually what we would want to see is more disagreement there, because we want kids to kind of have that productive level of struggle and not necessarily following step-by-step procedures. So from this, I was able to really kind of hone in on how to support kids in productive struggle and knowing what that limit is before they get frustrated. And then also helping teachers feel more confident and not doing all the telling, but kind of setting up a really good engaging math task and then stepping aside and let it in coaching phase. So that was one survey we took. The other survey we took is teacher self-evaluation of math teaching practices. The math practices across the bottom are considered to be the highest yield math practices by the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. So establishing goals, implementing tasks that are on grade level, using and connecting real world problems. Sorry that these cut off. I'm terrible at PowerPoint, but I'm really good with other math stuff. Facilitate meaningful math problem solving, posing purposeful questions, building procedural fluency, supporting productive struggle, and elicit and use evidence of math practices.
So, Vicki, if I could just say,
Yeah.
on the facilitate meaningful math, there were none that said they got this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And meaningful math problem solving. That was really interesting. And then these two are really connected because it's really hard to support problem solving if you're not feeling very confident on how to be a good question asker, right? So we decided to hone in on these two practices in our next several sessions of teacher professional development. Really thinking on how to ask kids good questions and really choosing materials that set up juicy problems, right? That kids are going to be excited about participating in. So one of the first things that Ralph and I did was understand that we needed to have better data because the information that was provided through the current instructional materials just was not giving us the kind of information we needed to see about individual skills levels. So I did some searching around and calling around to area districts and then talked with my math colleagues from around the state. And iReady is the most widely accepted math diagnostic in Washington State and quite frankly across the country. And it's very, very affordable. So we were able to get iReady up and running and purchased right around December. So we currently have 75 site licenses. Teachers participated in 2 staff trainings on how to implement the iReady diagnostic. And iReady allows for individual student data on the 4 key areas of math aligned to Common Core. It also supports implementation of MTSS and differentiation for students that are at different levels. It also really allows...
What's MTSS?
Oh, sorry, help me out, Ralph. Multi-tiered systems
of support.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Sorry for the acronyms. So first thing we did was get that diagnostic up and running, get the site licenses. Heather was amazing in helping us get that figured out and assigning all the rosters and getting every single kid put into the system. Teachers had some embedded professional development on those key instructional practices that I just mentioned. Student discourse, we talked about growth mindset and how to effectively use classroom manipulatives. And then using the data from the diagnostic to develop an individual student learner profile. So we know exactly where every single kid in the district right now falls in terms of their skill set on their grade level. Developing personalized learning path is embedded in iReady. So every single kid in Skamania now has a personalized learning path that is aligned to their needs. If they are excelling or testing out of a particular skill, it moves them past it. They don't have to continue repeating assignments and lessons and tasks that they've already mastered. And then what we still need to do moving forward is examine some other curricula. iReady is great. Teachers are currently using both the diagnostic and the classroom instructional materials, and they're feeling a lot more confident about knowing where every single kid is and how to support them. But we do want to make sure that we take a look at other options that are out there and of course evaluate that by price and what that will cost and everything. We want them to implement at least one full unit from each of the pilot materials. And this will start in fall of 2022 with a recommendation for adoption sometime next year. And though I will be done with my internship, I will still be at ESD 112 in my role supporting STEM instruction, so I am happy to continue coming out here and support the curriculum adoption. Here's just a couple pictures from both our teacher professional development, and that's Mrs. Dilly there, and she's working on pattern block recipes, which was just a concept I had never heard of before, but we brought in a specialist from OSPI to help out with pattern block recipes, and this is Stephanie Ober conducting a number talk. And a number talk is really a way for kids to talk about their ways of solving problems and learn over time to not just talk to the teacher, but to talk to one another and support each other with those solutions. So, I see 13 dots here and they're configured in a bow tie. Oh, really? That's interesting because I saw 2 triangles put together. So they really get to have these conversations where they don't have to feel as though I don't want to speak up because I'm afraid I don't have the right answer, because there are lots of ways to answer this problem. So it's a really great way to get kids confidence really fast. Every teacher in the building that teaches math has implemented a number talk, or sometimes they call them dot talks, every day since they got the training in early February. And already they're starting to see the confidence levels boost. And this is playing out into other areas of the classroom management. So where you're seeing kids that are really able to kind of snap into classroom dialogue a lot quicker in other subjects, in science and in social studies and in ELA. These are the diagnostic assessment results that we got back after the first assessment in February. So you'll see that the early on grade level, about 17% of our school-wide students, this is every kid in the school has now taken the iReady assessment. 12% are mid or above grade level, and then 53% is 1 grade level below. 18% combined are 2 or more grade levels below as of February. This number is actually on par with where almost every single other district is right now in Southwest Washington as a result of the learning loss that occurred during COVID. So we kind of expected that to be the situation, but at least now we have not just this snapshot of school data, but individual school data or individual student data. Our K-3 students had the most on grade level assessment data. And then in grade 4, we see a steep trend where that score drops off. By the 4 domains in math, geometry is absolutely the highest need in terms of student development. Only 15% of students in the school at grade level or above, which is why we started with number talks and which is why we started with the pattern blocks that you saw Ms. Dilly working on. So that went directly back into where we saw from the data that kids needed the most support.
And we thought it was really important to do this diagnostic data before we purchased a curriculum, so that we could truly understand what the needs are and where we would focus our efforts.
Absolutely. And then, so this was the diagnostic we took in February. Teachers are really working hard. Kids are really working hard. We have Smarter Balanced coming up towards the end of the school year, and we'll also be able to administer another iReady diagnostic in May. So we'll be able to see growth from February to May with about 14 weeks of instruction in between.
They've been doing some after schools on Tuesdays and Thursdays to help kids do some catching up also.
Yes. So some of the things that are changing in terms of teacher instruction, they're implementing those positive math routines. Every single day you see it in here happening, and you can see if you walk around, you'll see their dot patterns on the wall. Whole group instruction is on grade level content, and then we have personalized learning instruction on an individual student pathway in iReady. That's competency based, like I said, so they don't have to just dwell on something that they've already mastered. The multi-tiered systems of student supports is available for us to be able to target those kids that need the most support and provide them with some intervention strategies. And like I said, second diagnostic is scheduled for May. So I'm sorry, that was a lot, but it's been a whole year worth of work. So I'm happy to answer questions if I can. And I would just say that this has really just been a great project, and the teachers are so wholeheartedly invested in this. They're loving it, and they're really excited about the resources, and they're feeling a lot more confident about math instruction.
I have a question. So how often do the teachers access the students'
Their individualized report?
Yeah.
They access them daily because they're able to go in and see, if we pick a random kid named Cody, right? Every single day they see how many assignments they completed and were on target, so they get a check mark. And then if they weren't able to complete an assignment, they can go back in and they can sit with them and coach, like I see Mrs. Hoppel sitting side by side with students, kind of working with them on a particular individual task. If kids go through their learning path for the day, they're allowed to do some math games. They get very excited about the pizza game or the kitten game or whatever it is. And they're able to go in and see those whenever they want. I can also pull them whenever they ask, just kind of like a summative report from the last week or so to see how many lessons were on task versus below, on target versus below target. And so they can still go in and kind of do that supplemental instruction and really drill down to a particular skill.
So tell me where we are as far as supplies go. The chart you showed, and I'm hoping we have access to your PowerPoint.
Sure.
Especially to be looking at curriculum, where the needs are, but manipulative, some of those things were so important, especially at the younger grades. Where are we in providing those supplies?
Well, we've been able to dig out a bunch, and we've got kindergarten has manipulatives, the first, second grade room has manipulatives. We probably would want to look at third through fifth grade. And then in the small office down here on the end of the hallway, which is where I typically set up camp, I brought in an entire resource library of things that can be photocopied for the dot talks. Lessons on rich math tasks, deeper problem solving for every single grade level. So they have kind of a math library in there.
So do you have a list, if we were able to purchase manipulatives, do you have a list of what we want and what we need?
That's probably the very next step I want to take with the teachers. I think they know best what they want,
right?
But I can also pull a list from our math specialist at ESD who knows exactly what their inventory might look like.
And often, once you choose your curriculum, the one you purchase often would have it go
Correct.
along with it.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for now.
Yeah.
Because it's important for them to have it now.
Yeah, they definitely have kind of the basic. When I say blocks, I actually mean blocks. The 10-bar blocks and things like that.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So there's plenty of that.
They have those in kindergarten, first and second grade. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm personally so happy to see this coming about. About 3 years ago, well, for the past 5 years, we've been looking at updating curriculum. About 3 years ago, we did reading and got a whole new reading curriculum. And at that time, we were saying, okay, what about math? And so I'm thrilled to see this at this point.
Yeah. And it was nice to be able to, knowing that there is the curriculum needs to be updated, to be able to provide them with immediate resources and immediate strategies, so we don't have to wait for that whole adoption and implementation was really, really critical.
And I'm very excited to see you utilizing the PLC, because those are important at every subject level and would be good. I don't know if it's also needed in, other areas for teachers, but to collaborate like that, and particularly having support staff included, they are part of teaching. And so I just think that's incredibly valuable that you're able to have the entire staff.
They are totally bought in.
Good.
One of the things that I didn't put in the presentation, but we're hoping to do, is something I notice in small schools is teachers in small schools hardly ever get to see each other teach.
Correct.
Because of the minimal staffing, right? So knowing that I'm here and we have some para support now, I would really like to put a studio model schedule in place so that teachers can, go down and watch kindergarten do their number talk, or come up to the middle school and see how they're having middle school kids collaborate on problems, because there's a lot to be gained by watching other teachers teach.
Well, you see what kindergarten, how it helps benefit second grade and fifth grade and whatnot. I mean, you see the siloing that takes place. It's so important.
Yeah.
So, the scaffolding,
Yes.
excuse me. Yep.
Any more questions?
So we should have results by May.
For the second diagnostic.
Yes, so that's when they're taking the test. When should we have the results by?
Oh, it's immediate.
Okay.
Yeah. That's one of the nice things about using iReady. You can get them like that. We can pull student and grade level reports.
I'm just thrilled with the teachers that they got to self-evaluate, so you understood what they need, and then also that we have the iReady.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just excellent.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And can we have access to the PowerPoint,
Sure.
or maybe I just email you or something?
Yeah, I can send it to
I
you.
do
I'll
that
send it
too.
to you guys.
Okay, because especially the charts. I think that's-
Did you want me to connect this again?
We gotta get Keith back.
Oh,
No, not Keith.
No.
Chuck.
sorry.
Chuck. Oh, he's
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is superintendent search process update.
Okay, so the company, recruitment company have posted it, the position. They posted it in Oregon, Washington, Colorado, California. And also sent it over to 40,000 administrators in the Western and Midwest US. It closes April 11th. There have been some inquiries about it. And so just kind of waiting and letting that process go on. Let me see if we can get him up here.
You getting Chuck now?
Yeah.
Is Chuck Greg?
What?
Is Chuck Greg McKenzie or,
No, Chuck Hole from ESD. He's our financial officer.
okay,
Sorry about that. We kind of hope you got my message saying we'd connect later.
Yeah, we're fine. We're okay.
good.
Okay, staffing for 2022-23 school year. Discussion and action, status quo with salary adjustments, and recommendation of staffing. Chuck, would you like to address that?
Well, let me start off by saying that what Chuck and I have been talking about is how could we keep the current staffing and increase salaries so that we're a little more competitive, even though our class sizes are small. And so Chuck and I have been looking at the budget, and that's what I wanted him to present on so that you would know if that would be a responsible decision to make. And so he's going to walk you through that. Okay, yours.
Okay, so kind of just high level, because obviously we're very early into budget season. As we've talked, I know in presentations and budget in the past that the number of students are loaded into funding formulas on the state, and essentially what it does is takes the number of kids and through prototypical school models for the elementary and middle school level determines how many teaching units that are going to be funded for the next year. Part of what we look at here for Skamania School District specifically is it's often hard to staff at the number of units that the state funds. Typically, this prototypical model funds fewer units than school districts hire, especially in teachers and even more so in classified positions. But what we need to take a look at is the dollar amount that is generated through this prototypical model compared to projected salaries. And kind of the initial take that I'm looking at with the apportionment numbers is the funding number that comes in for teachers for next year equates to roughly a salary level for a teacher with about 12 years of experience, degree. So it's generating right now money that's for more experienced as far as just prototypical salary schedule and education wise. And currently what we're looking at with the staff as of today is we have a few more teachers that are new to the profession. So looking closer at bachelor's degree and just a year or two of experience. So typically with the salary schedule, that funding number is, or the salary number is a lesser dollar amount. So we're getting funded for a more per funded unit than we're staffing at this point. The flip side of this is we're funded for a little over one teaching unit less than our current staffing levels. The good news to this is that right now, as I'm projecting numbers, we're looking at if we didn't change the number of staff and assuming a number moving forward for the salary schedule, that once we figure in, I believe, the funding that we'll get from the ESD for special education, and then bringing in our various grants, be it Title I, Title II, and a little bit of Title IIA and SRSA, so again, some federal money into these special needs areas, that we're looking that the funding for teachers appears to be covered, as I'm projecting at this point, for the next year. So the question, kind of this big level question that Ralph presented to me is, could we move forward with our existing staff level, even with enrollment numbers projecting that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ralph, was it 60 or 60?
Yeah, to be conservative, 60, yeah.
Okay, so, and again, as we've talked about, and I know there's a few new board members out there that, because there's what's called small school funding formulas, your enrollment until we get to 70, and 70 is a magic number, that the minute we have enrollment over 70, there's an additional half of a teaching unit that is figured into the apportionment formulas. So your numbers really don't move a whole lot typically for kids between really the 60 number and 70. When we look at overall funding level, your funding's probably closer to 12 or 13,000 per kid, but it's very flat. It's not that number is moving up or down with each individual kid. It's just that average funding per pupil is going down because that number is pretty flat relative to that. So that was kind of I thought the starting point and kind of what Ralph and I were talking about is, here's early into the budget process and the feasibility of maintaining existing staff levels moving forward into the budget for next year.
Exactly. Yeah, and before we go on to salary, because Jerry's gonna share some salary comparisons, do you have any questions for Chuck about this part?
The takeaway is basically current staffing is covered with current enrollment.
Yes, current enrollment through the apportionment system, and I truly believe with grant programs and the ESD special ed reimbursement program that's going on as well.
Okay.
And the prototypical model has been changed this year.
There was some changes to the prototypical model in what the social, emotional, so school nurses, psychologists area. The challenge again for you as a small school district is that you're guaranteed funding for your enrollment numbers. So as you generate more staff, these bonus units fade out. So even though there's these new figures, and for next year, I think it was going to generate about 0.17 more of teaching units to have the nurses, psychologists, all of that for this phase in for next year. But what that means is you're still getting bonus units because of your enrollment numbers in 7th and 8th grade is generating a pretty good number, but it takes these total bonus units, subtract what you're generating through these apportionment models, and again, your funding remains relatively flat. So even though there was a change in the prototypical model, the funding outcome is negligible for you for next year.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Jerry, you want to come up and join us? So one number that we've been throwing around is, well, talk to us about the 5% that we think we might see a bump in.
The 5%, and to, sorry Angus, back to that. So part of what is determined in the state's budgeting process is this salary inflationary factor. So salaries that they're going to send out to you, again, for all of these funded units on both the teaching side, classified side, administrative side, is increasing by 5.5% for next year. So the salaries that you're being funded for this year is increasing by 5.5% in the budget for next year.
Automatically.
Automatically, yes.
So is there also, and I know they don't call it the COLA money anymore, but this is separate from that?
No, this is what used to be called COLA is now inflationary adjustments.
Okay. So that is coming down automatically.
Yes, that goes straight into the apportionment system. So again, this funding number, so that's where this number looks now closer to a master's and closer to 12 years. It used to be kind of closer to a master's in 5, but that 5%, 5.5% increase kind of bumps it up a little bit. It kind of just changes the dynamics ever so slightly with that.
And that's for all staff, including classified.
Yes, the 5.5 increase as far as funding out of the apportionment system is across both certificated instructional staff, so teachers, and then classified, so your parapros in basic ed and your office staff, as well as the administrative positions, so the principal superintendent position.
Okay, thank you.
Now, and what I would like you to consider tonight, after you hear what Jerry has to say about comparing us, is a few years ago we bumped up the salaries because we were pretty low, and you can see that we're back to low again. And one idea is to get some action tonight about maintaining the current staffing, and add 7% across the board to everybody to increase. But with that, I'd like Jerry to talk about, and I think this was in your packet, so you should.
Yeah, I'll just go over it real quick. I did a comprehensive analysis of Skamania School District with other districts in Southwest Washington, and even a couple that are kind of outside Southwest Washington. And as you saw in the teachers, certificated teachers, Skamania was at the low. They were at the bottom, significantly. When you look at a beginning teacher, and I just looked at the beginning teacher rate, and then the top of the schedule, which is normally about 16 years. And so, we were the starting teacher wage here, 43,564. And then the upper end is 75,852. Where the average, if you look at the average above the other districts, it's all, 46, 48 starting out, as high as 97. And it's become a real concern because you're competing. It's become very competitive. Even in my former district, it was, that was one of the things that was on the agenda a lot. And when you look at classified salaries, there's a discrepancy there as you review that. I broke them all out. Just
Excuse me, Jerry, can I ask a clarification question talking about teachers?
Yeah.
There are 4 that have plus TRI start and TRI top. What's TRI?
those are tri-days, they're flex days.
Okay, gotcha.
Some districts have them and some don't.
Okay.
And so these were the districts that did have it, and you can see when they have 5, 6, 7, 8 or more days,
Or more.
and some have a lot more. And when you go north of here, it's a lot more. So yeah, you can see what impact that had on the teacher salaries.
And could you just share with me, I noticed Stevenson was included for the teacher salaries, but not in additional support in the classified positions
It's because they didn't have a current schedule that I could get to.
online. I
Yeah.
saw they didn't have their Schedule A
Yeah.
online.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's why I didn't include them in there. And the one they had was too old
Okay.
that I had access to, so. But just going quickly, I started with the secretary's office manager positions, and you can see, and what I did when I surveyed, anywhere from 12 to 14 districts, and then I averaged it out so you can get an average of starting wage and then that top wage. And you'll see where I added the 7%. Now you're looking at 21, 22. So all of those other districts are going to be adding their 5.5 or 7% or whatever their bargaining units had on top of theirs already. And so we're still playing catch up.
Yeah.
So I just want to emphasize that. So you see where we're at with the office managers and secretaries, and then paras were broke out into your standard para educator and then those that work in high needs. Again, I ran all those district averages and then showed where we are at, which again, we're at the bottom as far as para wages.
And we do not differentiate between areas,
Not
so there's
unless,
not additional
right.
we're working with.
No, some are hired through the ESD, and so they're paid a salary through the ESD. Others, we hire them and then bill the ESD through that grant you talked about.
Okay, but I'm not sure if I answered or asked the question properly, but we don't distinguish between, for instance, paras working in life
No.
skills and,
Not on the current
No,
schedule.
because we don't have a life skills program.
but we do have a special education, like we have students mainstreamed, so we may have students that need more support. And so we don't distinguish, for instance, if they have a one-on-one or something like that.
No, not at this time.
Okay.
And then it moved in, the next category was bus drivers, and you can see there, again, where the averages are and where, with the 7%. We were closer there, with bus driver wages. And then custodian, what a typical custodian wage is. And you'll see we were, again, we were at the bottom there. And then maintenance, what the average in other districts, and then where Skamania is at. So again, there with the 7%, we catch up for a little bit closer to where 21-22 wages are, but all those other districts are gonna be realigning their schedules too. And then I finished up with food services, which is another position here in Skamania, so.
You did admin too.
Yes, and you have the admins, just what, principals, superintendents in like districts. These are more like districts, so.
So if you're talking 7%, the 5.5 is a pass-through basically, and so we'd be funding the additional 1.5% is really what we're talking about.
Right. I do think you need to have a little more discussion about principal superintendent, so it's real clear as you're looking at hiring a new one of where you're eventually going to be at that. So go ahead. I wanted to make sure we don't skip over that.
Well, and that'll come up too when you're negotiating that contract with the new superintendent principal, so.
I just want to be clear, tonight, can we approve staffing for next year, but table the salary increases to our next meeting? Because what I'm wrestling with is 7% brings some of these positions to the average. It does not to other positions.
Right.
And I would like to see, Cynthia's worked on union negotiations, as have I.
Well, and so
And
have
I think there's something to bringing people up to that median and doing the financials on it, is seeing what our budget capacity is to be doing that.
One of the strategies I used in my old district was just that. We had categories that were way out of whack. So instead of a percentage raise, we agreed on a dollar amount.
Correct. To bring people up, and then from there on, you can do those percentages. But I feel we need to do the financials to look at that, to see if this would be the opportunity.
I couldn't agree more. Because when you take 7.5% if you're making $20 an hour versus $22 an hour, all it's doing is continuing to exacerbate the differential between the high paid and the low paid.
And that's why when I was working with my unions, we came to an agreement on it. There were certain categories we just had to catch up. We were way behind.
Correct.
So, and that was the most fair way to do that.
And the intent, and I'll use Heather as an example here, is we want quality employees, very high quality employees, and we want them to stay. And so, that's the purpose here. But within our capacity, to fund.
And I was in negotiation with 3 contracts, 3 different unions in my old district, and we, over the 12 years I was superintendent, we had to work we were the bottom of it, including me as a superintendent. And so, we put a lot of effort in working to get that up. And last year, we finally got to a point where we were competitive, and we had to be, because our surrounding districts, it's, and the cost of living where we were at, I mean, we had all these external factors that were hurting us also. And so,
And I would like the opportunity, and I don't know if it would be up to you or someone else here, to get Stevenson's current.
No, I can get
that, because I think that's going to be our competition as well, and just to be sure.
I'll talk to their superintendent and actually I'll swing in there and get a copy.
Because I did the same thing, the contract's up there, and it was like a 4-year contract, I think, but it didn't have their Schedule A, just their substitute salary sheet.
No, I'll talk to Ingrid and I can get that.
So I would like to ask a question. How do our staff get increases now without a collective bargaining agreement? Just every year a budget?
We do a meet and confer, and typically it's been whatever the COLA has been and there's been a couple of cases where we've bumped certain ones up, but I've appreciated this level of evaluation that Jerry's been doing, so that he could now meet with some staff and do this meet and confer process. What we wanted to make sure is, are we on the same page as far as the board goes in keeping our current staff, so we can let them know that, hey, we're not cutting or anything. Instead, what we're looking is maintaining our current staff, and we're looking at increases, but we want to have more conversations about what that should be.
Yes.
And I would, go ahead.
The question I would have, essentially all the schools right now are having troubles with maintaining and capturing staff and keeping staff because it's all just becoming kind of a wild west issue.
Yeah.
And then when you start looking at crunching the numbers, can we start looking at beyond just this next year and make sure that it's going to be
Yeah, good
sustainable to not shoot us in the foot in 2 years?
Well, and you have to move forward, with like what you're saying, what can you afford to do, and then, moving forward with that. That was a big consideration when I was working with my unions in White Salmon is we lost over 120 students with COVID, and that had a huge impact on, okay, what's it going to look like this year? Well, we thought, as I worked with my school board, I said, we don't know if they're going to come back. They didn't. In fact, we lost more. And so, but, there was, and that's when you start looking at, how much of your fund balance do you want to chew up? And, but at the same time, we still have to be competitive. And so it was one of these catch-22. And classified, personnel, I've always been an advocate there because there's some real lopsidedness in where classified wages are. So it's,
And for you, they probably were not all funded
no, they weren't.
from the state, so you're
No,
pulling
and
out
that's,
of that
we
too.
relied heavily on backfilling that through our levies, so.
Yeah. So that's what's kind of exciting here is we're not having to do that.
Yeah.
They're all funded.
Right, Chuck, you want to talk about though that, so this year, we've been able to, with ESSER funds, not lose and dip into our reserves. Just talk about reserves a bit, and I think that Donald asked a good question, is can we sustain this? Let's say we go above 7% in some of the categories.
Right. Kind of what we're looking at, again, our expenditures are a little bit accelerated from prior years, and I think part of it is just, I think it's truly the nature of expenditures that you run into there in Skamania. The challenge is last year is not, I don't think, a great barometer. So when I'm trying to project out how expenditures are flowing, it's truly looking closer to 1920 kind of expenditure patterns. So with our budget this year, we had projected to use fund balance and come in, and I believe the number is about 220. I think is the number. Right now, what I'm waiting on, and this is another one of these, the revenue stream from federal forest, waiting to see when that money is going to come in and what that dollar amount is going to look like. But again, apportionment's down a little bit, just because of the kid makeup. So again, even though it's relatively flat, there's just a little bit of down with that. I'm still projecting right now, coming in, I'm looking at 200 right now, and I'm trying to be conservative with that. So I'm thinking again that our budget number is still realistic, and if things come in right and smoothly and above what I'm projecting, we're above that 200. And as we talked about the last two budget years, that 200 gives us a little bit of room, but our budgets over the last few years have been, showing that we're going into fund balance. Sometimes what happens is, we're not increasing expenditures, but we're finding grant programs to come in and fill some of these areas that we're not required to hire new staff, so we can charge off parts of these salaries, because again, we have staffing that's above the apportionment numbers, so that's kind of played into our favor. So I may be a little guilty of being ultra conservative on trying to give you projections, maybe playing some more worst case scenarios. But the answer to your question is yes, we still have some runway, as I like to say at this time of year, that we can continue to budget how we have in the past, but we still need to be looking out 2 years. So again, that sustainability is we want to probably move towards evening up our revenues to expenditures at this point, but again, I still think we have another year that if we're still working on, we do a salary bump this year to get us competitive. So, it's also expensive when staff leave. That's the other thing. So we'd like to keep happy staff and moving forward, not running into additional costs with substitutes and double hirings and those types of things. So I know I kind of beat around the bush, but as far as my outlook right now is, yes, we still have room. We can still react, not necessarily in this next budget, but we still can keep our eye on the budget the following year and make changes if necessary at that point.
So what I'm looking for tonight is a statement from the board, maybe the one that's voted on, about maintaining current level of staffing and then a commitment to looking at salary increases.
I would entertain a motion.
And I'll second.
No.
I move that we,
Maintain
Agree.
current level of staff.
yeah, the staff that we have and look at salaries.
You would.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to state that we will maintain our existing staff level and we will be evaluating salaries as the budget gets closer. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
I want to say thank you to Jerry for compiling all this. That's,
Yes.
that's just a tedious mess right there.
It was very tedious. But it's what you needed, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I hate those jobs.
And the next item on the agenda is an executive session. We're going into executive session for 15 minutes. It is 7:47. And so we'll be coming out of executive session, let's say at 5 minutes after 8. And the purpose of the executive session is superintendent evaluation.
Thank you, board.
On the future agenda.
We will have the salary.
Yeah,
We'll be at the next
that'll be
meeting.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll have budgets. I mean, they're normally
Mhm.
going to be periodic things. This is just more for something special that interests you if you'd like to have an agenda.
And we
Okay.
can add those subsequently.
Reports and comments, superintendent's report.
So you got the information about reading month and some of the book swaps and the staff reading books and teaching that. Also, we've got our music teacher met with PTO presidency and scheduled May 23rd for the spring music matinee and the June 16th talent show and dessert auction. That will be in the evening, and that's that'll be in the evening.
I don't think that was on the flyer that came out. Or
No,
the
it
email.
wasn't.
So, but it's the 16th.
That's
Okay.
And the last day of school is June 24th,
Okay.
and that's what I have for the superintendent report.
June 24th. That's running kind of late, isn't
It
it?
is late.
Okay, budget status report. Well, we heard Chuck say that it looks like our ending fund balance is still doing quite well, satisfactory, and like I've always said, anything above $125,000 I'm comfortable with. And as of the March 15th report, we have collected total revenues budgeted $1,583,290. We've collected $643,130, or 40.62%. And state general purpose, which is our apportionment, is 46.83%, and the special purpose we've collected 50.29%. And like Chuck was saying, we're waiting to see what the federal forest fees are going to do.
When do those usually come through?
You know, last year the county had heard by this time.
Yeah.
but we didn't get them transferred from the county until it was later. Might have Amber call the county and see if they
Yeah.
had any. And expenditures, we've expended 46.84% of the budget, so roughly 6% more than revenues, but again, that's pretty common at this time of year. We had budgeted an ending fund balance of $204,728, and as of today, our ending fund balance projection is $279,807.
And may I just ask quickly, is pay prorated for staff, so we still have those funds going out during the summer? Or no?
Yes.
Okay,
And so what we do is we encumber those funds, so
Okay.
that they're locked in.
okay.
And capital projects fund, again, the budget was $3 million. Revenue, we've collected $2,022,971, or 67% of the budget. And we have spent $1,990,977, or 62.91%. We had forecasted spending all of the budget and having a zero ending fund balance, but right now we're looking at $268,026. And considering what we heard about the septic tank, that's not bad.
Indeed.
And again, we still have not gotten or spent any transportation monies, so that is the budget report. Any comments or questions? Training.
Yeah, so in the spirit of training, I'll be putting some policies on there. This is 4220 and then the procedure 4220P, which is complaint policy. This is one that was adopted back in 2019 when we did our policy review. And so I wanted you to have a chance to look at that, see if you had questions, and if anything needed to be updated with that policy.
And so are we doing that now, or this is kind of an initial look?
Yeah, it's not like a first, second reading, it's
Right.
already been adopted. It's just because we've got such a new board, put some in there for you to look at.
I thought it looked good. It's standard.
Yeah, it is very standard.
The only thing that had been confusing in the past is it says to go to the immediate supervisor, and just about everybody, the immediate supervisor is the next step up, being the superintendent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but
Right, and this is intended really for community. Primarily, a lot of times schools have collective bargaining agreements that have more about how to handle those kinds of issues. So that might be worth a discussion in the future.
board trainings, open meeting law training. Everybody take their board, open meeting law training. It is an online course. What is it? 4 videos, something like that. And I think it took me a couple of hours, 2.5 hours to go through all of it.
But we brought you, like I brought you the certificate.
Yep.
Yes,
Right, so-
print off the certificate and bring it in.
Okay.
Equity training for board members, we got an email that they're having the first session of the equity training at the ESD on the 19th of April.
So what it was.
Yeah.
And it's from 6 to 8:30 in the evening, and you can register for it online just by going to that link. Question is, do we want a carpool?
I think I'll drive myself.
Okay.
I love riding the electric car.
It's nothing against you all, just, I get like 45 minutes a day to myself. I'm gonna take it.
Okay.
We promise not to talk.
Lisa, same.
I'm gonna take
I'll get back to
45
you on
minutes. to
Okay.
myself.
Yeah, and I'll get back to you too.
Okay, great. And then the board member boot camp. And you mentioned that it's online, they've got the schedule
Yes.
for it, it costs
Yeah.
$75,
Yeah.
and that is reimbursable.
Okay, and so we just print out the payment, and bring it into you, Ralph?
Yes.
Is that, okay.
Yeah,
Excellent,
we have it in the office a reimbursement form.
okay.
Board of director comments, any comments?
I just wanted to say, and this will be quick, I was very impressed with the posting that went out for the superintendent
Oh, good.
principal position.
It was great.
It's very good, and I thought it was very representative of the staff request for qualifications, for the community that was involved with that aspect of it, with the board. I think it spoke highly of our area and the potential for the school and the programs that are already going on. So it was a really nice collaboration, I thought, and I hope we have some wonderful candidates that want to jump in and make this even better.
Yep. Upcoming dates. You want to do
Those
that?
are just, parent conferences are coming up, 28th, spring break, and then our next school board meeting.
Usually in person.
Yeah. It's nice to be back in person. And I know Beth is happy with that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
Move to adjourn.
It's been moved.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. And the meeting is adjourned at 13 minutes after 8.
All right.